everyone, Clio here and welcome to my third Booker book talk. So I've been trying to get through the shortlist for the Booker Prize 2019. I know that the winner has already been announced at this point, but my intention is not to finish the shortlist before the winner is announced. I mean, if at some point I might be able to achieve that, that's great, but I also don't make it as much of a priority as I should in order to be able to reach that goal. So it also just reflects the fact that I don't really mind that much to read some of these books after the winner is announced. So at this point I actually read 2 of the books before the winner was announced, and they actually turned out to be the winners of the Booker Prize. So it'll be interesting to read the other ones now, but last year it was actually it was a bit different. Last year I read all of them after the winner was announced. I first read the winner and then I read the other ones. So basically I'm ending up in the sort of same situation where I read the winners and now I'm going to read the other ones. So the one that I'm talking about today is 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this strange world by Elif Shafak. So it is a novel set in Turkey. We are following our main character Leyla, or as she refers to herself at the beginning of the book, Tequila Leia. She is a prostitute working in Istanbul. She has just been killed and we are following the sort of like 10 minutes and 38 second window in which her consciousness is still alive even though she has just been killed. So I thought this is what kind of drew me to the novel as well. When I read the premise, I was thinking like, okay, this might actually be something for me. It's very much looking at, say if your consciousness was alive for 10 minutes 38 seconds after you die, what would your consciousness be doing in those 10 minutes and 38 seconds? And so in this 10 minutes and 38 seconds we are looking at the way that Leyla is looking back on her past experiences. So every minute she's kind of having a memory of something in her past life, and all of these memories are linked in some way or another to a taste or a smell or a sound maybe. I think mostly it's taste and smell that has been very important to one of her memories. And that's definitely an interesting thing, because I have seen this also in the novel, for example, Como Agua para Chocolate, that tastes can get a very strong relationship to our memories, you know. Often when you are eating something that you ate as a child, for example, this can really take you back to those times and have a sort of like nostalgic atmosphere to it. And so I really think that that is an interesting way to look back on your memories. It was also always nice because she always starts each chapter by saying what the taste or smell is that she is remembering. So it might just be like, and she remembered the smell of lemons, for example. And then the chapter will move on seemingly in another way, so it will just be going back through a scene from her past, but at some point in that scene you will have the smell of lemons and you will know why the smell of lemons is linked to this scene. And that I really liked. I really thought that that was interesting. I will say that I had quite a lot of difficulties with that part of the novel. So basically the novel is divided into 3 parts, and the entire premise of the book, or the way that I thought this book was going to play out, is basically the first part. First part corresponds to a little over half of the book, and this is the part in which Leyla is taking her 10 minutes and 38 seconds to look back on her life, on the people she met in her life that had an important role to her throughout this life. And so we are looking back on her early childhood, on her formative years, and on how she ended up as a prostitute in Istanbul. So basically she was part of a very disjointed family. So her father had 2 wives, and she's actually the daughter of the second wife, but her father decides to make it appear as if the first wife is the mother, because the first wife couldn't have any children, and so it's kind of his gift to his first wife to let her remain the most important wife and let her claim to be the mother of his child. And so Leyla grows up thinking that somebody's a mother who isn't actually a mother, and so when she finds out the truth, that really breaks up the family even more. So she doesn't have this warm, fluffy she doesn't have this really like warm, fluffy, stable family experience when she's a child. And the book also looks into how she actually chooses her own family. You know, there are people who enter into her lives who she becomes friends with, and who will later turn out to be her real family. She calls it her water family. What I really liked about the first part of the novel, because this novel is set in Istanbul, so it's definitely taking place in a different culture than my own culture. So we're very much getting a background look into Islamic culture. So I really like these sort of like folk tales, these sort of like superstitions that they have in their cultures, which were explained, or these sort of rituals that are taking place. For example, there were a lot of them relating to childbirth that were really interesting to see. For example, something about the mother who's going into labor, she bites into an apple, and then afterwards, when a healthy baby has been born, then the rest of that apple is handed down to the other mothers of the neighborhood who are trying to get pregnant, as a sort of like good luck charm for them to get pregnant. The biggest strength for me in this novel was the second part. Actually, in the second part we are following Layla's friends as they try to reclaim her body, basically. So we are introduced in the first part to 5 friends that have really shaped her life, that have really become her sort of second family. And I didn't like this while I was reading it in the first part, because we are given Layla's story, we're seeing how Layla met these people, but then after she meets them, every single time there would be like a chapter in which you get the background story of one of these friends, and I thought that really took me out of Layla's story. It kind of made a distance. It was kind of like a break of these. It kind of broke up the story for me, and I also felt like, yeah, well, we were following Layla's story. I don't know why we were getting these other people's backgrounds in between there, and I would have much preferred to get their background stories somehow in the memory of intertwined into Layla's memories. I think that would have been much stronger. Afterwards, I did understand why we get their background stories, because in the second part we are mainly following these 5 people. However, I wasn't really paying that much attention to their background stories, and I still don't think that it's that essential for you to have their background stories in order for you to be able to enjoy the second part. So in the second part, Layla has just been killed. Her real family is distancing themselves from, oh my god, her real family is distancing themselves from her because she made choices in her life that they cannot get behind, and so her water family, or her friends who have become closer than family, they want to reclaim her body and they want to give her a proper burial, but as they are not relatives, they do not have a right to her body, and so they're kind of pushed away, saying like, no, you cannot have her, please go home. We will deal with her the way that we have to according to administrative rules. So basically what's going to happen, she's going to end up on this sort of cemetery where everybody who is unwanted or who has no family who can claim them ends up. Some big impersonal cemetery where there are like so many people there that it's almost impossible to find somebody back, which in Islamic culture is a very big deal. I mean, it will also be so in Christian culture, of course, but according to like her, in order for her soul to be safe, this is very much a not okay situation. And so I do think that is the strength of this book, this sort of look at the water families is being called, so the friendship bond that is stronger than families sometimes, because yes, sure, you can be from a warm and fuzzy family and have a super strong family bond, but sometimes the bonds that you create yourself, the friendships that you build, can be much stronger than family bonds, and yet these friends don't really have a right to you or to any information about your health, especially not when you're dead. So you see this a lot in TV shows and things like that as well, of course, that when somebody is in a hospital, only family is allowed to know what is going on, even though your friends might be a lot closer to you, you know, or a boyfriend who isn't married to you yet, that will have no rights to information about you, but like a father who's very much estranged from you might be allowed to get this information even though he's not interested. So there's something at odds here in our society where friends are sometimes not entitled to the sort of information about you, even though they are much closer to you than some of your families might be. And so I think that was the most powerful theme in this book and the thing that I most enjoyed. I will say that I definitely enjoyed part 2 more than part 1, even though I feel like when we're talking about the art of literature, the first part is definitely more interesting. It's a much more interesting structure. It's a much more interesting way of telling a story than the second part is. But I did enjoy part 2 a lot more, and I think the theme of water family and all of that is only explored in part 2 actually, basically, because in part 1, yes, we get an introduction to these friends and we get their background stories, but nowhere did it feel to me like, yes, these people are more important to Layla than her own family, because I feel like it was rushed, kind of, this sort of introduction into this second family, and that only in the second part do we really get a reflection of how close this bond actually was. And then I guess one final short thing that I want to be mentioning is that I always like description of cities in literature, and I think we also got a very interesting description of Istanbul at some point. Don't think it was the main focus of this novel or anything like that, and it wasn't delved into as much as sometimes in other novels, or I didn't really pay attention to it this much, but there was this one passage that I really liked, and I'll read it out loud to you guys. It says, "Istanbul was an illusion, a magician's trick gone wrong. Istanbul was a dream that existed solely in the minds of hashish eaters. In truth, there was no Istanbul. There were multiple Istanbuls, struggling, competing, clashing, each perceiving that in the end only one could survive." And then it goes into sort of descriptions of the many types of Istanbul, and I really like that one. The sort of description of the city as being not just a whole, but a sort of amalgamation of different parts. So yeah, a city is never just one thing, you know. Paris is not just the city of romance, for example, you know. And it was interesting to look at a city in that way and to kind of show it also as a kind of a struggle, you know. And so it was an interesting description of the city to add to my many interesting descriptions of cities in literature. I might at some point do a video about the description of cities in literature. It's a theme that I really am drawn to. I did a paper on it once when I was in university about the way that cities are described in literature. I didn't really have a lot of background info on it back then, still don't actually. It was kind of like my intuition about the way that cities were being described in literature, but I still am very much drawn to this subject and still very much like books that describe cities, or that these types of books in which like a city comes to life, or in which a city becomes a sort of character that needs to be portrayed. But so in any case, this was my book talk for 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world. I think I gave it a 3-star rating in the end. I really liked the second part. I really do need to say that the second part flowed very well for me, and like I think I finished the second part in like 2 days versus the first part took me like 10 days or something like that. But that is also the reason why I'm giving it a 3-star rating, because I felt it to be a disparate read where I almost felt like I was reading 2 different books, and that just didn't really suit my taste in any case. I also feel like whereas the first part might be the part that makes it a book of note and then makes you think like, yeah, this is maybe Booker Prize worthy because it is doing something interesting with the art form. The second part is actually the part that does flow the best, and yeah, for all of those reasons I only gave it a 3-star rating, and so far it's on the second position in my reading for the shortlist. But that's also just because I really didn't like The Testaments by Margaret Atwood, so we'll see when I read these 3 other books in this shortlist where this book ends up. But yeah, I enjoyed this reading experience. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I also didn't dislike my reading of this. So please let me know down below if you've read this book, what your thoughts were about it. I don't know whether you had the same experience of it just being like more or less 2 books that you were reading, and in that case I would be very interested to see which part actually drew you in the most, because I can very much see how other people might have the opposite of really liking the first part and then feeling like the second part was just like meh. So let me know down below, and then hopefully I'll be able to give you some more Booker content soon. Normally I will also be posting my sort of like reading vlog experiences for these 3 books soon, so be on the lookout for that one. Bye!